Assalamu alaikum and welcome to this weekend's edition of Book Bites. I have a very, very exciting guest and story to share with you. I'm personally very excited about this book. It's not often that I have the opportunity to chat about a new children's story. And it's exciting because I know that this author has followed a dream and presented and finally released this beautifully illustrated and written children's book. So this evening's book it's literally been released a couple of days ago through Beit al-Hikmah. It's called Nani's Tricks by Mariam Jhaveri. Mariam Jhaveri is a Durban-based author. She's a mum of three, obviously a very visual and wonderful storyteller, and a part-time economics lecturer. So there's a lot of talent coming through in this, but extremely excited, especially because Mariam followed her dream through, and we have with us a copy of Nani's Tricks, a very, very interesting and exciting book. Mariam, welcome to the show. So lovely to have an opportunity to chat to you nice and early in your process, in your launch process at least.
Assalamu alaikum, Shafinaaz. So good to be here.
So I told you I'm so excited. I mean, I saw just a couple of days ago that Beit al-Hikmah started putting out the notifications of the launch of the new book, and they quickly had copies together for this weekend's Eid Fest. So I got my copy there. Tazkia was very excited. I'm very excited. So first and foremost, congratulations on following your dream. How does it feel?
Jazakallah. I don't think it's quite sunk in yet because it's been. I mean, it's been a very lengthy process, and
Right.
just to see it in print now, it's quite yeah, it's still sinking in. But alhamdulillah, I'm so grateful that it's actually out there. Yeah, so definitely not a quick process. The printing happened fairly like quickly, but in terms of the process, no, it hasn't been quick at all. So alhamdulillah, I'm very
Right.
grateful.
And what was it like? I mean, let's go back to your motivation. Have you always had the story? Have you wanted to write it? Did it just like sort of, did you one day say, this is the kind of story you would write? How did your process and your motivation happen?
So my kids are my youngest is 6, and then I have an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old.
Okay.
So we've been reading a lot of children's books, like literally hundreds of children's book over the years. And I think within that time period, I'm sort of working in my day job sporadically and spending a lot of time with my kids at home with them and reading a lot because that's just I think that's the only time I've actually really felt like a competent parent is when I read aloud to my kids, and I feel it's just so valuable. So within that period, I think I like dabbled a bit in my own story writing, and then what I started doing was like just whatever free writing classes I could do. I did those. Started following book reviewers, editors, authors online, and then eventually I did a writer's course with Naima Roberts. And then within that writer's course, you had to write several stories and then work with her and her editor to develop those. And then this was, I think, probably about a year and a half to 2 years ago. And just previously to that, in our family, we had lost a lot of elderly family members in a relatively short space of time. So
Right.
like my Nani and my Daddy like passed away within like a year of each other, I would say. I mean, alhamdulillah, we had them for a really long time. They passed away, quite old, but it's still a huge loss, and it feels very like you kind of lost your anchors. Um,
Yeah.
and you're moving up like a level up in the world. Your parents are now the old people, and you are now a proper adult now. So I think because I had lost so many close elderly family members, I had it on my mind. How do we continue their legacy? How do we pass down their values to our children? So I had that on my mind, and I think that's where this story came from. Trying to attribute to them and trying to pass down these kind of old school values to the next generation, but in a fun way. Yeah.
It's definitely in a fun way. I mean, you've accomplished this because as much as we can make sort of diarized notes about the kind of things they did to save or to repurpose certain items certain recipes, certain healing recipes, or what they did if you had a sore throat or whatever. Nani's Tricks is such a fun and beautiful way that you bring through, so many of these, and in a way that's accessible to younger readers. I mean, I enjoyed reading it, even though it's not like a lot of material. I enjoyed the images, and I enjoyed reading them because it's like you have these aha moments. But you've accomplished it. This is not just for young readers. This is something that, even as you said, you so calmly said you feel like, more accomplished when you're reading to your children. But you touched on a very important point, and that is, how do we inculcate a love of story and a love of reading in our children unless we sit with them, cuddle with them, look at the books and the pictures and create that love? It's really you're creating a culture of readers. You've obviously raising readers in your household.
Yeah, my daughter is actually quite a fan of your Nisa Kumar series. Now that she's in a preteen age. Yeah, but yeah, so you're right. Reading is so important, and then this book is meant to be read aloud. So it's meant to be, and I think the best books are meant to be conversation starters. So it's not so much about my grandparents and my great aunts. It's about everybody's. I mean, anybody could write a book about their beloved elders. Really, anybody. There's just so much to say. So that's really where I want this book to go, inshallah, is as a conversation starter. So as you're sitting with your kids, you share memories of your own grandparents and of the past and, what they used to do. I think you had mentioned once on social media about your granny keeping away her plastic packets and folding them up.
Yeah. In samosas.
Yeah, that's what it was. It was in samosa shaped triangles, which kind of stuck with me. I was like, oh, I wish I'd heard that story earlier. I would have included that one. So it's just so many stories.
Right. No, and I think exactly that. I mean, when we sit down and chat about the past and about what Nani did and what Mum did in the kitchen, and sometimes it's so instinctive that we learn these things without remembering to jot them down or note them down. They come through in the conversations we have. The fact that you can, where we can put them into our stories and that you can have these visuals for the next generation is definitely legacy making, and so beautifully. I mean, this is a delightful book. The images, the way the images carry your story are absolutely delightful. Like, you want to look at them. In themselves, they tell the story,
So that's the thing. I mean, with picture books, so preschool picture books especially, illustrations are really everything. So Azra Mu'min was the illustrator, and she's based in Canada, and she's quite a prolific illustrator. She's illustrated a lot of books, and so she's, extremely professional and very talented, alhamdulillah. So I mean, the illustrations are not merely like decorations; they enhance the story. It kind of goes hand in hand. Without them, the book does not work at all. So it's really important to have like really good illustrations. And alhamdulillah, she did an amazing job with that. And also, like, just like a few hidden details here and there. And I mean, the book at this age, kids are still enjoying like books being read to them repeatedly. So the idea is, like, the first read, they get maybe something out of it, and the next, and then, it like kind of evolves, which I like. I don't, I mean, as a reader, a parent that reads a lot of books, I don't appreciate stories that kind of tell you the theme, like this is the theme of the book on the first page, like, don't waste, for example. It's nice when you can have a discussion that slowly reveals itself and that you can elaborate over time. So, and I think kids as well, I think kids don't like to be lectured at. So when it's something that's just a story and then they kind of like slowly, getting the message, but without being like, very like, like not too obviously, like a more subtle approach, I would say.
Right. Now, and as I said earlier, I had these aha moments as I was reading because I didn't know what to expect. Tricks could be games or whatever. And then, like, I don't want to give away too much of the book, but just getting through one by one, I was like, oh, that's what this is about. And oh, that's really a good idea. So, as an adult already, I had these aha moments. And there's no doubt that your younger readers are going to have like a really fascinating time going through this book. What have your kids said? I mean, sometimes I think children are the best critics. How have they felt now that they, have a copy of your book?
So that's a good question. So my older kids are now into the chapter book category of life now. So,
Right.
but my youngest is 6, and I think that's kind of the age category, like preschoolers. So she really enjoyed it. But my older kids are now older, but still, it's still nice, like a bonding tool to go, through it with your older child and have a discussion about it. But yeah, it's definitely
Right.
geared up for younger readers. Um, but yeah, it's also the way I try to like in terms of style, I try to do it such that so some of the scenarios might be unfamiliar to certain kids, because I mean, like some families don't actually do these things anymore, like use old clothing and cut them up and use it to
Right.
white table, although we still do that kind of thing. So I try to base it in a familiar backstory, which is a sleepover. So that's generally familiar to most kids, and it kind of grounds the other scenarios, so that there's something familiar in the background, and then maybe some unfamiliar things which they've never seen before. Um, so yeah, just to try and balance it, because I know not every family does things in the same way. So I want it to be something relatable to everybody.
And also, what would eventually happen is you mentioned your book or any book being a bit of a conversation starter. Is it this relatability comes about in that conversation? You could say, "Oh, but my Nani or my daddy does this or used to do that," and there could be some snippet of this that then brings up those memories. And I hope, and this is the reason why I ask a question like when your child sees your name on your book. I hope this encourages more of our children to write as well, because so often we think that writers are from out there somewhere. We get books from the UK, from India, from the Americas, and to see a book written, in general by a South African author, but in particular by an adult from your home or by
Yeah.
somebody from your home, is to say, I can do this. It opens up a new scope. It broadens the imagination to say, I can write my story. You
I
know.
hope so. I hope it inspires them and other kids as well. Um, yeah, and I think just also for them to realize that our own our own elders, who were sometimes like quite invisible, just in the way they were, especially the female elders from previous generations. Um, they didn't take up a lot of space. Obviously, no social media, no fame, no name. But they were very valuable as well, and I think that's also important for our kids to realize. Because the world has changed so much. It's just everything has to be kind of out there, and for them
Yeah.
to appreciate values that are maybe more simple. So that's also important, and also to realize that our grandparents were kind of trendsetters. Like now, I mean, we hear so much about reduce, reuse, recycle, which is
Right.
great that it's become so mainstream now. But our grandparents were doing this like what 50 years ago, just on their own, and there was like nothing, like no fame attached to it, but they were just, this was their natural way of being, where the way they tread the earth was so gently, and the footprint they left was so little compared to us. So I think it's important for them to realize that the small things matter.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, these are Nani's tricks are life skills, and they ran their households often with large families, and a little went a long way. They had the tricks, well, tricks. I'm saying tricks because now your title is stuck in my head. But they
Yeah.
had these skills to really add value to life and bring value to their table. How they cooked, how much the food spread out. They really looked after things. And I mean, even from an Islamic point of view, we often hear about this is a human perspective, but also an Islamic perspective to say, not wasting. Don't waste. Find a way to repurpose certain things. Whether forming compost out of your shavings from your vegetables or whatever the case might be, peels and potato peels and whatever. Those are skills that they've passed down all the years. And in a more consumer society, I mean, maybe we've lost some of that. And that's what makes this so important.
Yeah, I think even I think the Indian delights also, like if you read through it, there's some tips for, what to do with leftovers, which you don't like
Okay.
often see that in a recipe book. It's like if you've got leftover dal or leftover rice, you combine it and make like a whole new
Make
meal
a
out of it.
casserole.
So
Right,
yeah,
right.
yeah, exactly. So it's just a beautiful thing, which I think is really worth reviving in whatever way that we can, and maintaining those values and not losing that. But there's so many stories also. I mean, like, so obviously you can't put every single thing into one little kid's book, and it has to have some kind of theme and narrative and flow to it. So I didn't include other things. So the theme of this book is then repurposing. But there were so many things that they did. I know, like, one elderly family member, I don't know, I mean, whether she would have wanted it to be mentioned, so I'm not going to mention her name, but she would carry like a little bottle of chili powder with her. So if I would go to like a restaurant with her and we'd be eating like French fries or chips or whatever it was, and then the waiter would come collect our plates after that, there'd be like little traces of chili powder, and the waiter would look really surprised because he never served us this condiment or like spice, and he's like, like, where did this come from? But she, like, obviously tucked it back into her bag and she would pull it out when necessary, because she found, like, restaurant food like really, really bland. So that
Right.
unfortunately didn't make it in here because it just like didn't go with this particular theme. But it's just, yeah, there's so many amazing stories about them, and they were just they were legends. So yeah, I'm really glad that the book is out, and I just hope, inshallah, like, as I said, it just starts conversations about those that we still have, are lucky enough to have, and those that we've lost also.
And there've been huge losses in the last couple of years, especially as you said, a whole generation, and we're beginning to feel that inertia because we've moved up a bit, and that responsibility is really over our heads to look after the next generation in such an ever-changing world.
It's an absolutely huge thing. Also, I just wanted to also thank you and other people in this industry, more established authors, who really encourage newbies like myself. Because I mean, I think I reached out to almost every person I know that's published a book or is in editing or publishing in some way, just to guide me along in the process. So I think that's really appreciated, and something that's also a really nice lesson for people to take away is, like, whatever skills you have to kind of help others along the way as well. So that was great in terms of my process, because you really doubt yourself. So I think you just have to reach out and ask people who've done it before. So that was very helpful.
You're absolutely welcome. I think it's so fascinating when you set out with an intention, it's really where you plant the seed. And yes, self-doubt comes in no matter, I don't know, for some reason, no matter how many books you've written. But an important part of the process is that you followed through, and that's a beautiful thing. So I'm so excited to be able to hold this, because I know you started chatting about this probably a year or two ago. There was the seed of an idea in your head, and then the fact that it's rolled and it's developed into what it is really, really, really nice to see. And I have no doubt that this book will, it will gain traction and it will be read. Another thing, I mean, as much as we like, talking about reading at home and creating a reading culture, I think your homeschoolers will also enjoy this book, because it brings about these conversations in such an accessible and fun way, and it's got these images that tell the story in such a powerful way as well. So I hope that homeschoolers are going to pick up copies of Nani's Tricks as well.
I hope so, inshallah. I admire homeschoolers so much, so I hope they do. I mean, in terms of, yeah, I think, like, when we were planning on having a little launch, like, some of the activities in the book kind of can be recreated in your home, and some of the art that you can do, or composting, or certain aspects of the book do lend themselves to creative aspects and crafts and things like that. So yeah.
Yeah, there's some very interactive sort of moments here as well. And like you said, I mean, just adding to the conversations, like, add three things that your Nani or Daddy did, and that would just sort of snowball this whole little movement of Nani's Tricks that you've got starting here.
Yeah, we're trying to snowball old school old school values. We're trying to, yeah, go against, hopefully, the tide, inshallah, and yeah, bring it back.
What about future stories? I mean, is there something brewing now that you've seen this come to life?
Yeah, I mean, I just like to see how this kind of goes first before before doing anything else. And then I mean, there's a few people told me, what about Nana's tricks or Dada's tricks or yes, Daddy's tricks? So I mean, who knows? But I think, I mean, I think this book will suffice in, including everybody. Like, it's not only restricted to grandmothers, grandfathers, stories, everybody. Um, yeah, and there's just so much. I mean, and also things that were not included as well. Like, I know one of my grannies used to collect sweet wrappers sometimes, from the Quality Street and the Ferrero Rocher golden wrappers. And I think for them in that generation, I think the idea that something was actually created to be discarded was something they couldn't actually process and fathom. Like something so beautiful, like a golden wrapper or like a beautiful color, cellophane wrapper, whatever it was, this was actually created to be discarded. I think that concept was something that wasn't easily accepted, by them. Whereas for us, it's just packaging is just thrown, all the time. So yeah, and I think it also is aligned to a movement that we see, globally, where we're trying to conserve resources in general, become less wasteful, less consumerist. Um, so it's not just buy. I think there is more of an awareness. I think it's also aligned to that growing awareness, hopefully, in terms of, just the wasting theme of it.
Right. I mean, when we talk about load shedding, to bring it to a more current theme, there's so much of food waste that happens, for example, because now we're dealing with like in Joburg, we've been having these 4.5 hour sessions where your fridges and freezers are just, like defunct. And as a joke, we reached into the past, and my granny was talking about her father, who 120 years ago didn't use a fridge or a freezer because they didn't believe in freezing their meat. But if they slaughtered an animal, they had a way of preserving this animal, skinning it and covering it in spices and salt, rough salt, and keeping a calico over, and then hanging it in a cool, dry veranda. And this meat lasted like 4 or 5 days, where they could then, continue to slice and cook when they needed it. We don't have those skills. We've lost some significant skills.
Yeah.
And we worried, about our frozen meats, like got kind of defrosting and refrosting and that sort of thing. So significant skills have been lost, even, at an adult level, to say, do we have the survival to be able to last without the technology that is sort of failing us in a state like ours?
No, it is quite scary. But I've also enjoyed seeing some of the memes that come out, like about back in the day they would take an iron and they would have to heat it on a coal, like a whole lot of
Right.
coals, and actually physically heat their iron in order to iron their clothes. And of course, we're not going to bother ironing during when there's no electricity. But they really worked so hard, and I think there's a little bit of deprivation with load shedding and things like that as kind of made us realize just how hard they worked. It's just phenomenal what our forefathers actually went through, and it's so admirable. Um, yeah.
Their survival skills were on a whole different level. We've become, I think, very sort of reliant and dependent on a lot of the easy methods that are slowly failing us. And I think that relearning these skills and rethinking these skills, this is an excellent sort of contribution to that.
Yeah, it's a small contribution, but inshallah, hopefully it has a good impact.
I wish you everything of the best. I had a really wonderful time both reading it and hearing about your process offline and now online on the show. So I just want to say all the best, but thank you so much for giving us your time this evening and sort of allowing me to pick your brain on your process, your motivations, and where we think this is going. I really think this is a beautiful start for launching this book and anything future that you might write.
Jazakallah khair. I really, really appreciate it. Just being here and just the support in general, and also just for being like leading the way back in the day. I mean, I think one of the first authors that I actually know of. So yeah, I think that inspires others definitely when we have people who have done it before. So you think, okay, maybe just maybe I can also do it.
Well, I hope this means that we're just going to inspire more and more of our stories to be written, and especially our next generation to be able to pick up the baton and write their stories as well, inshallah.
Inshallah, it's unique stories, and it's good for the children, I think, to see themselves in these stories. And as you said, I mean, it's got a bit of a local flavor to it.
Yeah.
I know my kids have this show that they watch. It's called Noor Kids, based in the US. So every Ramadan they watch a lot of this, and then they only like they speak about basketball and baseball and lasagna, and they come, with all of that kind of American style lingo because there is a lot of South African there are a lot of South African books coming out, but not enough, I would say. So inshallah, hopefully that the local industry will grow as well.
Inshallah, Ameen. So we're going to be watching out for all your launches, and we know that right now the book is available at Beit Al Hikmah, and we'll be watching their social media pages for launches. We wish you everything of the best.
Jazakallah. Yeah, it should also be available at Suhaila online as well quite soon. And yeah, Beit Al Hikmah definitely already available there.
Okay, excellent. And so there you have it for this week's edition of Book Bites. We chatted to debut author Mariam Jhaveri about her new book, Nani's Tricks. Be sure to get a copy and watch out for the socials to see when she's launching in your area. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.